Imagine walking out to check your crops and finding strangers in your field. Now imagine those strangers aren't human and they freeze you in place with a strange device while they finish their work. This happened to French farmer Maurice Masse in 1965, and where their craft landed, nothing would grow again for decades. Even more chilling, the beings shared information so shocking that Masse vowed to take it to his grave, and he did. Today, we're uncovering the Valensole encounter, a case with undeniable physical evidence and a mystery that died with its only witness. July 1st, 1965. The sun was just beginning to rise over the lavender fields of Valensole, a picturesque village nestled in the heart of Provence, France. The purple rose stretched endlessly across the rolling hills, their sweet fragrance carried on the morning breeze. For 41-year-old Maurice Masse, this was home, workplace, and livelihood all rolled into one peaceful existence. Masse was no ordinary farmer. During World War II, he had served as a resistance fighter, risking his life against Nazi occupation. After the war, he'd settled into the quiet rhythm of agricultural life, tending his lavender crops with the same dedication he'd once applied to fighting fascism. The local police knew him as a reliable, honest man, someone whose word could be trusted without question. But lately, something had been troubling Masse. Throughout the final week of June, he'd noticed that someone had been stealing shoots from his lavender plants. The damage wasn't severe, but it was irritating. Who would sneak into his fields at night to pick his crops? And why take only small amounts? Masse had decided to keep a closer eye on his property, hoping to catch the culprit in the act. On this particular morning, Masse positioned himself by his tractor near a pile of stones at the edge of his vineyard, which bordered the lavender field to the south. At exactly 5:45 a.m., he lit a cigarette and prepared to start his day's work. The countryside was peaceful, with only the distant sounds of awakening birds breaking the silence. Then he heard it, a sharp whistling sound cutting through the morning air. Masse's first thought was that a helicopter had landed nearby. Military aircraft occasionally used the area for training exercises, and pilots sometimes made unauthorized landings that damaged local crops. Annoyed at the prospect of dealing with another careless pilot, Masse stepped out from behind the stone pile to locate the source of the noise. What he saw defied every assumption he'd made about his quiet morning. Resting in his lavender field, about 200 feet away, was an object unlike anything Masse had ever seen. It was egg-shaped, roughly the size of a Dauphine automobile, and appeared to be made of a smooth metallic material that gleamed in the early morning light. The craft rested on 4 thin legs, with what appeared to be a central support or pivot extending down into the earth. But the object itself wasn't what captured Masse's immediate attention. Near the craft, he could see 2 figures moving among his lavender plants. From a distance, they looked like children, perhaps 8 years old, crouched down and apparently examining or gathering his crops. Masse's anger flared. So these were his mysterious thieves, but something seemed odd about their size and movements. As a father himself, Masse was familiar with how children behaved, and there was something distinctly wrong about these figures. Determined to confront the trespassers, Masse began walking quietly through his vineyard, using the grapevines as cover. As he drew closer, however, his anger transformed into confusion, then growing alarm. These weren't children at all. The beings stood approximately 4 feet tall, with large, hairless heads that seemed disproportionate to their bodies. Their skin appeared smooth and pale, almost luminescent in the morning light. Most striking were their eyes, large, slanted, and definitely not human. Their faces featured pointed chins and small mouths with no visible lips. They wore tight-fitting gray-green coveralls that covered their entire bodies. As Masse continued his approach through the lavender field, one of the beings noticed him. The creature stood up and turned in his direction, then made a sound to alert its companion. The second being also rose, and both stared directly at the approaching farmer. Masse found himself about 15 feet away when one of the beings raised what appeared to be a pencil-like tube in his direction. The farmer had just enough time to notice the device before everything changed. A brilliant flash seemed to explode in front of Masse's eyes, and suddenly he couldn't move. His legs refused to respond to his commands, his arms hung useless at his sides. Yet he remained fully conscious, able to see and hear everything around him. His heart continued beating, his lungs continued breathing, but he was completely paralyzed from the neck down. For several long minutes, Masse stood frozen in his field while the beings observed him. They seemed to communicate with each other through soft, gurgling sounds, not quite speech, but some form of language. There was no malice in their behavior, just what appeared to be scientific curiosity about this human who had stumbled upon their activity. During those terrifying yet fascinating minutes, Masse was able to study the beings in detail. Their movements were fluid and purposeful, suggesting intelligence and coordination. Their technology was far advanced beyond anything he'd encountered, yet they seemed more interested in his lavender plants than in him personally. According to Masse's later account, something extraordinary happened during his paralysis. Though he never revealed the specifics, he claimed that the beings somehow communicated important information to him, knowledge so profound and significant that he vowed never to share it with another living soul. This secret would haunt and comfort him for the remaining 39 years of his life. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 20 minutes, the beings concluded their examination of both the lavender and the paralyzed farmer. They moved with purposeful efficiency toward their craft, their movements suggesting they had accomplished whatever they'd come to do. Masse watched helplessly as the beings entered their egg-shaped vehicle. There was no visible door or entrance. One moment they were outside, the next they had somehow passed through the craft's hull. The object began to emit a low, humming sound, then rose vertically into the air with incredible speed. One moment, the craft was there, hovering above the lavender field. The next moment it had vanished completely, leaving no trace of its passage through the sky. The sudden departure was so swift that Masse wondered if he had imagined the entire encounter. But he hadn't imagined it, and the evidence was all around him. As the paralysis gradually wore off, a process that took another 20 minutes, Masse found himself alone in his transformed field. Where the craft had landed, the earth was compressed and hardened like concrete. The lavender plants in the immediate area appeared stressed and damaged, their vibrant purple flowers already beginning to wilt. Still shaken by his experience, Masse made his way back to the village of Valensole. His appearance alarmed the proprietor of the Café des Sports, who questioned the farmer about his obvious distress. Reluctantly, Masse shared part of his story, hoping for advice on how to process what had happened to him. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the small village. Within hours, the local gendarmerie had been notified, and Captain Valet arrived to investigate. The police found Masse's account troubling, not because it seemed unbelievable, but because the man telling it was known for his reliability and honesty. The physical evidence at the landing site was undeniable. In the exact spot where Masse claimed the craft had rested, investigators found a circular depression approximately 4 feet in diameter. At the center was a cylindrical hole 18 centimeters across and 30 centimeters deep, precisely where Masse said the central support had penetrated the ground. Radiating out from this central hole were 4 shallow grooves, each about 2 meters long, forming a perfect cross pattern. The soil in this area had been compressed to an extraordinary degree, taking on the consistency of concrete despite the fact that it hadn't rained for weeks. But the most disturbing evidence emerged in the days and weeks following the encounter. The lavender plants in the landing area began to die systematically. What had started as minor stress became total crop failure. The affected area formed a perfect circle about 3 meters in diameter, and within this circle, no lavender would grow. Masse tried replanting the affected area multiple times over the following years. Each attempt failed. While healthy lavender flourished in rows just meters away, the landing site remained barren except for a few hardy weeds. Soil analysis revealed dramatically elevated calcium levels in the affected area, a chemical signature that couldn't be explained by any known agricultural process. The investigation attracted the attention of France's leading UFO researcher, Aimé Michel, who visited the site on August 8, 1965. Michel documented extensive plant damage along what appeared to be the craft's takeoff trajectory, a path of withered lavender extending over 100 meters from the landing site. Under microscopic examination, the affected plants showed characteristic patterns of heat damage. Shoots that had been healthy before July 1st were now desiccated and crumbled to dust when touched. Yet shoots that had emerged after the encounter grew with unusual vigor, as if the soil had been somehow enhanced rather than damaged. The physical evidence was compelling, but perhaps more significant was the effect the encounter had on Maurice Masse himself. In the weeks following his experience, the robust farmer began suffering from extreme fatigue. He would sleep 12 to 14 hours a day, and even then struggle to stay awake for more than 4 hours at a time. This wasn't ordinary tiredness. It was as if his body's energy had been fundamentally drained. Medical examinations could find no physical cause for his condition, which gradually improved over several months, but left him permanently changed. Friends and family noticed that Masse seemed to carry a burden of knowledge that both troubled and inspired him. The case attracted international attention from UFO researchers, who found several compelling aspects to Masse's account. Unlike many UFO encounters, this one had occurred in broad daylight with excellent visibility. The witness was considered unimpeachable by local authorities. Most importantly, the physical evidence was extensive and long-lasting, providing objective confirmation of the reported events. Pierre Guérin, a French astrophysicist, visited the site in November 1968 and found the landing area still clearly visible. No lavender grew in the affected circle, which remained distinct from the surrounding healthy crops. Even in March 1969, over 3 years after the encounter, the site was easily identifiable. During his visit, Guérin interviewed Masse's wife, who revealed fascinating details about her husband's psychological state. According to her, Maurice thought about the beings every single day. He considered the encounter a spiritual experience and wanted to preserve the landing site as sacred ground. Yet publicly, he tried to downplay his continued interest in the event, perhaps to avoid unwanted attention. The secret knowledge that Masse claimed to have received during his paralysis became a source of both torment and comfort. He hinted that the beings had shared information about humanity's future, about the nature of existence, or about realities beyond earthly understanding. But true to his word, he never revealed specifics to anyone. Not his wife, not researchers, not even his closest friends. Jacques Vallée, the renowned UFO researcher who would later inspire the character of Claude Lacombe in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, interviewed Masse on multiple occasions. Vallée found the farmer's account consistent and compelling, describing it as one of the best documented close encounter cases in European history. What made the Valensole case particularly significant was its combination of reliable witness testimony, extensive physical evidence, and official investigation. The French government took the case seriously, with multiple agencies examining the evidence and interviewing the witness. Unlike many UFO encounters that rely solely on eyewitness accounts, Valensole provided objective, measurable proof that something extraordinary had occurred. The case also demonstrated the profound impact such encounters could have on witnesses. Masse's life was fundamentally altered by his experience. The formerly outgoing farmer became more introspective, more spiritual in his outlook. He developed a deeper appreciation for the mysteries of existence and a sense of responsibility for the knowledge he'd been given. Years passed, and still the landing site remained barren. Masse eventually stopped trying to replant the area, accepting it as a permanent reminder of his encounter. Visitors to his farm could clearly see the circular dead zone among the otherwise thriving lavender rows, a testament to forces beyond conventional understanding. The story might have ended there, with Masse carrying his secret to the grave and the landing site serving as an enduring mystery. But in 2004, as Maurice Masse lay dying, researchers hoped he might finally reveal what the beings had told him during those 20 minutes of paralysis. He didn't. True to his lifelong vow, Masse died on May 14, 2004, taking with him whatever profound knowledge the visitors from another world had shared. His final words on the subject were reportedly that some secrets were too important to reveal, that humanity wasn't ready for certain truths. The Valensole encounter remains one of the most thoroughly documented and scientifically investigated UFO cases in history. The physical evidence, witness credibility, and official attention it received set it apart from the vast majority of reported encounters. Yet perhaps its most enduring mystery isn't what happened that morning in 1965, but what knowledge died with Maurice Masse 40 years later. Today, the lavender fields of Valensole continue to bloom in their endless rows of purple. But there remains one small circle where nothing grows, where the earth itself seems to remember a morning when visitors from the stars came calling. And somewhere in the cosmos, perhaps those same beings remember a French farmer who kept their secret until the very end. If you're fascinated by cases where physical evidence meets unexplained encounters, please hit that like button, subscribe for more documented UFO mysteries, and share this video with anyone who believes the truth is still out there waiting to be discovered. Your support helps us bring you more stories that challenge everything we think we know about our place in the universe. Disclaimer: this video is based on public reports, eyewitness testimonies, and speculative analysis. Some details remain unverified. All interpretations are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.